Hey bud, it's me again. Um, again, I promise I won't make this a habit. Not that I don't enjoy doing it, I actually enjoy it very much, but I'm kind of long-winded and it takes me a while to get to the point. So it's probably a little annoying on the receiving end. But I there's something I need to share with you. Well, need is probably a lie, but I would like to share with you something that happened to me today. It kind of knocked me on my ass and I'm having a hard time kind of integrating it. Um, I mean, on balance, it's a positive thing, I guess, but it just touches so many buttons or anyway. Um, and I'm telling you number one because I'm hoping you'll find it interesting and you know the context of what I'm going to tell you about. The second reason is a very selfish one, right? I'm very selfishly telling you because I need to tell someone and you know the context, right? Um, and so, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get emotional. I'm hoping all of that has gotten out of me since this afternoon, but I might. So apologies in advance. Anyway, um, so this has to do with, well, background, right? To understand this, it's going to take some background. So you remember that, JP Franca and I were friends. Um, People used to pronounce his last name Frankie, right, the American way. But I remember I spoke to his father Hans once. He said, "This is Hans Franke," and so the German, okay, he pronounced it the German way. Anyway, and so part of this is JP and me, right? And I don't rank my friends. I don't think of my friends that way. But at that time, right? I mean, the three people I was closest to then were you and Fred and as it turned out, him. And he and I, you know about yourself and Fred and all that, but he and I became very close friends. Surprisingly so. Not because I didn't like the guy, but because when I first met him, he was so different, right? Demeanors were different, apparently our goals were different, whatever. It was an unexpected friendship. And there was no real reason for it on paper. To different schools, knew different people, different schedule, right? We weren't even on the same crew in the rescue squad. There's really no reason on paper for us to really get to know each other at all. And somehow we became very close friends. And then I'm telling you this because this is sort of context for what happened to me today. And it's kind of the story of JP and me. And anyway, how we became friends is you know um one night, it was a Monday night, I actually went to the squad house because I my duty night was Sunday night the night before. And I had accidentally brought home some of the squad copies, like the yellow copy of the patient care reports, right? I brought them back to campus with me accidentally. And I found them and I was like, oh my God, I got to get these back and file them away. So I came to the squad house Monday night. And the reason I had them, I don't know if you remember, our crew was, TC Huddleston, right? Um, and Amy Lilly, right, his girlfriend, and he just decided to stop coming to our duty nights. He just stopped showing up for months. And since I was TC, myself, Fred, Jeff Atkins was our driver, and then we had the kid who was the explorer, right? This Boy Scout. I can't remember his first name. He was a good kid. He was a lot of help, actually. He was very good. But when TC stopped coming, I was the only licensed EMT on that crew. So that turned me into the crew chief, right? That turned me into the AIC, the attendant in charge. Fred had taken the EMT course with me that previous summer, but he didn't pass the test, so he wasn't licensed, but he had the knowledge. I had the knowledge, but very inexperienced. I had no experience, right? I mean, I didn't have much EMS experience, so and so, all of a sudden I'm taking charge of these calls. Anyway, and so some were serious, some were not, right? Some were chest pain in the middle of the night, some were asthma attacks. One of them was a 4-car smash up at Worsham Grocery. And that I won't ever forget. Especially the moment we pulled up. We had been driving around. This was a night a few days before my birthday in November, sleeting that night. And we had been out. It was, like 6:30 or so, and we'd been out. Jeff always liked to go to the drive. He liked to drive around in the ambulance to kind of show off. And anyway, we were just heading to get something to eat, and we went to the drive-through, like Wendy's or something. And anyway, that's when we got the call about it. So we hit the road, and right down 15 we landed. And so when we got there, we were the only unit of any kind there except for the state trooper. And this young state trooper was there in his yellow parka and everything. And I got out, and the first thing he said to us, and there were bodies everywhere. And you know, there were junior high school basketball players in a small van crowd. And they were all, there were bodies everywhere, like 8 bodies on the highway. And it's sleeting, and the first thing the state trooper says is, "Who's in charge?" And they kind of pointed at me, and I said, "Well, I guess I am." He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And anyway, you can imagine. Anyway, that's a detour. Anyway, I see I can't get to the point, right? Um, so anyway, I had gone back. I brought those patient care report copies, the squat copies, back to file them. And it was Monday night, the next night, right? And so I just kind of went upstairs to the lounge, right, just to see who was there, and the only one that was there was JP. He was sitting on the couch there on TV and looking at the TV he had. He was sitting cross-legged. He had a textbook in his lap. He was kind of studying and watching TV. And I said, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And I never really gotten to know him or really talked to him, and I'd seen him there, in sort of a, "Hey, how's it going? What's up?" kind of way, but I'd never really talked to him. And so I just thought to myself, just briefly, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is a chance to get to know this dude a little bit." So I said, "Okay, hey," and kind of went and sat down on the couch next to him and just started to chat with him. And we just had a nice conversation, kind of get to know each other a little bit and laughed a bit. It actually went quite well. I liked it. It was nice. I liked it. And I my impression of him, I had seen him sort of strut around, be, kind of sarcastic and kind of like histrionic and stuff. And it didn't like put me off or anything, but I just, that wasn't quite my personality. And I never was like, "Oh, okay, but, it didn't come across with me that way, right? He was just pretty much, kind of, it seemed like happy to kind of get to know me and vice versa. And so anyway, that was that. I stayed about a half hour and chatted with him and stuff and just kind of joked around and got to know each other. And it was cool. I was glad because I hadn't had a chance. And so anyway, I went back to campus. Now fast forward to that Friday. This was Monday night, and that following Friday afternoon, got out of class, and that was when Fred and I we had a quad, like with the 2 doubles in the quad and the D dorm, and it was Fred and I in one, Brad Wallet and Dave Hopkins in the other. That was a crazy semester, as you can imagine. You probably remember, but wow. Um, Not always in a bad way, but just kind of, boom, crazy shit happened. Anyway, so it's Friday afternoon after class, and all 4 of us are kind of hanging out in the quad, the lounge, um, and and actually, I quite remember, like, on the TV, MTV was on, and they were talking about the Madonna song "Like a Prayer." It had just come out, and the music video had the Harlem Choir singing in the background, and it was like a big deal. And everyone was making a big deal about it. And I can remember that was on TV. Anyway, all of a sudden the door opens, and in walks JP. And I'm like, whoa, and and I jumped. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And I mean, I assumed he was there to see me because I didn't think he knew anyone else. Maybe Fred, but only peripherally. And I just assumed I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And then I guess I was kind of it was kind of neat. I was like, "Came all this way for what?" Right? And it didn't occur to me to think of how he found me. Like, how did he know where my dorm was, and who did he have to ask to find out? And wasn't even his campus, right? So and I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Not a goddamn thing." and and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I have to go to Harris Teeter." He said, "Do you want to come along?" And I don't know, I was kind of touched by that. I thought, well, I thought you came all this way. I said, first of all, Harris Teeter is right next to you, pretty much, but well, but give or take, and you've got a million people that you can go to Harris Teeter with, and you came all the way here. And And I just thought, obviously, you came all the way here to hang out with me, maybe. I don't know. So, but I was like, sure, that's great. I mean, chance to hang out with him, get to know him a little better. And so off we went to Harris Teeter, right, in town and right there, which is now where Southside Hospital's emergency receiving is called Centra, right? That's now what used to be Harris Teeter, that shopping center. Anyway, and so off we went in a little silver Scirocco of his, which he drove way too fast, but that's beside the point. And we just kind of kind of frolicked in Harris Teeter and walked miles and people watched. And I actually had a blast, right? And got to know each other a little better and more comfortable. We just kind of joked around, and it was fun. It was good. It was fun to be around him. And and so we took his groceries back to his apartment. Right, it was a house on High Street, off High Street, which was going to be not too long in the future our apartment, his and mine. And we dropped off his groceries, and he brought me back to campus. When he dropped me off, he said, "You know where I live now." He said, "Whenever you're in town, if you want to stop by and my car's there, I'm home, the door's open, just walk in. You want to stop by and hang out or whatever, whatever." And so I kind of took him up on that, right? I thought, well, gosh, this guy is. I mean, it's not that I liked him, wasn't that? But I thought, he seems to want to be like friends with me, which shocked me in a sense because my impression of him was, well, before that was that we were very different demeanors, very different personalities, different ways we spent our free time, right? And he spent his free time partying and hooking up with girls. And okay, no harm, no foul, but that just wasn't my vibe. And vibe, there's a modern slang word anyway. Um, but I would find out soon enough that on the surface that was true, but beneath it, we were actually far more alike than I would have imagined. But anyway, I started taking him up on it. I would just stop by, hey, what's up? Hang a little bit. And, over time, we got to know each other that way and we became friends. And and then we took this MCAT course. So I would drive to Willow Lawn. We would take turns and we would hang out on the trip back and just really got to know each other and spend time with each other and just kind of clicked. And um and he he always gave me the impression, not always in words, but he always gave me the impression that he was truly glad to have me around. Like he was always happy to see me and happy I was there. And it was palpable, right? And not that I wasn't happy to be there, but it's just I've never really felt that, right? It's where someone really made it clear that that happy I'm around. I'm so happy to see you. Um and so yeah, and then he started to invite me to some of his fraternity parties, right, on Fridays and Saturday nights. And I couldn't all, and I certainly didn't go every time he invited me, but I mean, I'd say 5 or 6 times I would go, right, when I could, felt like it. And I just went to his Fahrenheit with him and kind of as his guest, I guess. And it was kind of awkward at first. And these are the SPs, right? Sigma Phi Epsilon at Longwood, crazy motherfuckers. All right. I mean, whoa, some of the shit that went down at those parties, holy crap. But I'll get to that. Um, it was kind of awkward at first because the SPs are like, why is he here? JP would get kind of indignant. He'd be like, dude, chill. He wouldn't say chill. He'd say, dude, he goes, he's with me, right? That's all you need to know. Treat him like one of us, right? I'm like, okay. It was kind of awkward at first, but after I went a few times, I actually got to know these guys. They just kind of accepted me and kind of treated me like an honorary member, like a, I don't know, honorary member or something, or brother or whatever. And I got to know these guys. I mean, they didn't become close friends of mine, but I got to know them, right? And they were people that I would never probably have ever had a chance to know. And some of them were crazy, some of them weren't. And anyway, but when we would go though, the point of all this is we would go to these parties and we'd get split up, right? And it'd be a lot of people, people just everywhere. And sometimes they were by the river, there'd be a bonfire. Sometimes they were at the frat house. Sometimes it was wherever. But we get split up in the people, right? Which is fine, and I can handle myself, mingle, and so to speak. And frat parties aren't aren't exactly my vibe either. But okay, something new, right? It's nice enough to invite me. Let's try something. Let's just broaden our horizons a bit. But we get separated, and that's fine, and that was fine. But then every 20 minutes or so, I'd look up and he'd be looking for me. And when he found me, he'd come up to me and he'd say, "Hey, you doing okay? Are you okay? Everything, like, are you having fun? Are you okay?" And there was genuine concern in his eyes. Like he would, had these big eyes and they would capture your eyes and look at you like he would try to figure out what was behind your eyes, like what were you thinking, what were you feeling. And he would look at me like that and he's like, "Are you okay? Everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, just hanging out in England." He's like, "Okay, well, I'll check on you again." Wow. I'm thinking to myself, check on me, like who gives a fuck about me and check on me, right? I mean, he's actually concerned about me, and cares, like gives a fuck, gives a shit. And I mean, how can you not be touched by that? Right. And it was genuine, it was sincere. And it's like, like this dude actually cares about me, and not that I didn't reciprocate it, but it was just, I didn't expect that. He didn't have to do that, but he felt kind of responsible for me and was concerned that I would be comfortable and have fun and so forth. And then one of the times we were at a party, this was actually by the river bonfire party. There were things going on that I really didn't like drug related things and some kind of abuse of girls, like abuse of like drunk girls. I almost date rape kind of thing, and I just did not like that. And he came looking for me and he found me. He's like, put his hand on my arm. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "You doing okay?" And he looked at me before I could even answer. He said, "You're not okay, are you?" And I was like, "It's all right, dude. Fine. Just," and he's president of this fraternity, right? He was like the fraternity president. He knew everybody and he had so many friends. He walked around with an entourage. Basically, when he was on the Longwood campus, he had an entourage. He was that popular. And so, I said, "Dude, you're the," he's like, "Well," then he says, "You're not okay, are you?" And he looked at me and I said, "Dude, I'm fine. Don't worry about it." He said, "No, you're not okay. I can tell." "Yeah, I know. Because I can look at you and tell." He said, "Let's get the fuck out of here." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Dude, you're the president of this fraternity. I'm like, you just gonna leave?" I was like, "You don't have to do that." He goes, "I know, but we'll get the hell out of here. Come on, let's go." Just because I wasn't feeling comfortable. And and I said, "Well," I'm like, "You're the president of the fraternity. What are your friends going to think?" He goes, "Fuck them. Let's get out of here." That's exactly what he said. "Fuck them. Let's get out of here." And I just thought, holy shit. I was like, no, I mean, this person cares about me, like actually is concerned about me and how I'm feeling and how I'm doing. And not that I wasn't about him. I had never, not that you weren't or Fred weren't, but I never had anyone, especially someone that I was becoming friends with, you know, I don't know, take me that seriously, I guess, and worry about me and my well-being. And I mean, it just blew me away. And how can you not grow fond of someone like that? I mean, I just felt it was just, you know what I'm saying, I think, right? I was just like so touched by that. And how can you not start to like think the world of someone like that? Not that I wouldn't anyway, maybe. But it just like always blew me away. He was doing stuff like that. And, I we would st- I would s- you know I would start borrowing his CDs, right? He had a big CD collection. I'd see one, and I knew he didn't care. I would borrow it, and then I would bring it back, and inevitably, if I borrowed a CD like more than 3 times, say next time I saw him, he'd have it in his hand, and he would say, "Here, I want you to have this because I know you like it." And I would like protest, like, "No, dude, it's fine. I can, you let me borrow it." He goes, "No, no, no, no," because I said, "I don't wanna take it." And he's like, "Dude, you're not taking it, I'm giving it to you because I know you like it and I want you to have it. It would make me happy because it makes you happy. I want you to have it." I'm like, and it would just floor me, right? I mean, and so anyway, he was just like that with me. Like he genuinely like appreciated my presence or wanted me with him. And like I said, I'm not saying it wasn't reciprocated. It's just I'm kind of giving you my take on it from my point of view. And I just and so yeah, excuse me. And then I remember one day we had this talk. We used to talk about all sorts of stuff, and I got to see a side of him probably most people don't, I gathered. I remember one day we had this talk, and we were just sitting on the couch. It was I'd stopped by there or something, and he was like, oh, I know what it was. Um, I was joking with him about his entourage, right? Because he was the president of his fraternity, so I used to call him like jokingly, instead of Jean Paul, I would call him Jean President, and he'd be like, "Shut the hell up," and then I was joking with him about that and his entourage, like a rock star or something, and I said, I don't have an entourage, but that's fine with me. It's more peaceful that way or something like that. And he said, dude, he said, hi there. And he goes, you think they're my friends? He said, these people are not my friends. He goes, the only reason they hang around me is because I show them a good time, because I party and I, do stuff like that. He goes, I entertain them. He goes, if I stopped that, they wouldn't come by. They wouldn't be or hang around me. He's like, they're not my friends. He goes, you're the only friend, real friend that I have. And he said, I'm so glad you're here. And then his voice broke like he was going to cry. And he said, I'm so glad you're here. He said, you keep me sane. And then he said something, he said, you help me remember who I really am. And that just floored me. I get emotional thinking about it. And, you know, he said, people, think of me as like some wild child party kid. And he goes, "It's definitely part of me, but there's more than that." He's like, "I don't like that I have that reputation, that people only think of me that way." And I said, "Well, maybe share that other side of you." He said, I know, but it's not so easy because I know these people aren't my friends." But he's like, if I'm still afraid of losing them, you know, because I'm kind of stuck. I don't, so I feel like I have to act this way to keep them. But even though I don't like people labeling me as just some party kid, and you know, and then I began to think, well, you know, I don't share that with them. I don't live that life with him, and I'm someone who knows him on a different level, in a different way. And so, perhaps that was like a major connection in the growth of our friendship. It was so great. I mean, that's as meaningful a connection as any. And so anyway, we just grew closer and closer, and I was thrilled to be around him. And I mean, he was very good to me, and gave a shit about me, and vice versa. And then and I remember, and I know that there's a point to all this. Something like I said, this is context to what happened to me today. But anyway, I remember one night. Remember there was I can't remember the name of it. There was some club, like some cheesy little club, like at the very end of Main Street or whatever in Farmville that people would go to. And one night he took me there. He's like, "Come on, let's just like a Saturday night." And he took me. He's like, "Let's go to this club." Like, because I have some friends that are going to be there. Let's go. So it was a Saturday night. I was like, "All right, fine." And when I went to these fraternity parties, I didn't usually drink much. Not necessarily not enough to even get because I knew I had to drive home. And so, back to campus, right? So I did. But that night at this club, I kind of drank some, and I wasn't like, drunk by any means, but I figured it wouldn't be prudent to like drive home. So we were there like 2, 3 hours in some cheesy little dance club, and what that club that I don't know what it was called. I can't remember. But anyway, and so I let him drive. We drove our car there, and I let him drive my car back to his apartment. And he's like, "Why don't you just stay here, right, and go home in the morning?" I was like, I could probably drive, but you're probably right. It's probably a better thing to do." Um, I was like, looking at the couch, and I was like, do you, I was like, he was in the bathroom brushing his teeth. When I'm like, "Hey, I got an extra blanket." Looked his head out, looked at the couch, and he said, "No, just sleep with me." And I thought to myself, well, that's the answer. That's an answer I wasn't expecting. But I thought, okay, whatever. Nothing wrong with that, I guess, right? And so, and so, anyway, so I get a dress call, and it wasn't a bed, right? He had this mattress on the floor. It was actually a very comfortable one, but it was like this queen size mattress right on his floor, and I just kind of crawled in bed, laying there. And he comes in from the bathroom, whatever. It's like pajama pants and t-shirt, right? And he comes to the foot of the bed where my feet are, and he starts to crawl like a cat, like a cat on the prowl, like crawl slowly up toward me in a very playful way, right? And he gets right on top of me with his knees in my gut and his hands on my chest, looking down at me, grinning, right? And I mean, it was very cute. It was funny, and I mean, it was like something little kids would do. It's like we became little kids in that, just kind of being kind of playful. It was just kind of sweetly playful. It was funny, and I looked up at him and I was like, "Nice kitty," but I can't breathe because I couldn't breathe. And he kind of rolled over and plopped over next to me. And he put his hand on his head like this, and he said, "So what's up?" And I was like, "Not a goddamn thing." And so we chatted a little bit. Then you know, just kind of time to go to sleep, right? So, okay, it's just kind of laid down and curled over and went to sleep. And then a couple minutes later, he said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure. What's up?" And then he said, "I promise I'm not gay." And I thought to myself, okay. And this is what I thought. I said, well, I thought to me, I didn't say this out loud, but I thought the girl every night kind of gave me the clue that that was the case, right? Whatever you are, you're not gay, right? Because he said, "I'm not gay," but this is what he said. It was actually a beautiful moment in its way, but unexpected. He said, "I promise I'm not gay, but would you hold me?" And I said, "Hold you? Like cuddle you? Cuddling?" And he said, "Mm-hmm." And then he said, "It's nice to be close. I like being close to you." He goes, "You make me feel secure when I'm around you." And he said, "I just would like you to hold me." And so I'm floored yet again, like, "Oh my God," you know? And there was nothing sexual about it. It was just an intimate moment between friends that I was had never had anything like that. And that someone and so I did. I put my arms around him and held him. And the minute my arms went around him, I could just it was palpable. I could feel the tension just come out of his body. I could just feel him relax when I held him. And he went to sleep. And I was awake for a good while, like pondering what's happening. Not that it was negative in my mind at all, but it was just like, whoa, it's kind of a level of intimacy between friends that was new to me. And I just it felt very powerful. Like this is something special. This is a special person. Not that you or anybody else weren't special, but it's just, and I just was pondering. And I remember thinking it was only happenstance that I ever really got to know him at all. If I hadn't gone back to the squad house that Monday night, and I'm like, and then I finally fell asleep. But it was like this extraordinary moment and one of the most intimate moments of my life. And again, it had nothing to do with, sex or sexuality or anything even close to that. It was just like an almost spiritually intimate moment with like a close friend. And anyway, and so yeah, and then one day, I was giving him rides. This was like mid-April. I was giving him rides around because his car was in the shop, his Scirocco, which it was many times. It was in the shop for like 3 days. So I was kind of when I would kind of give him rides to places that was too far to walk that week. And then I dropped him off one afternoon. He paused in the passenger seat, get away with his brow furrowed. He was thinking about something, and he sat there for 30 seconds or so. And I kind of waited for him, like, okay, what's up? He turned to me and he said, "We should be roommates. You should move in." And I thought, huh. I was like, okay, that might be cool, actually. I mean, yeah, that might be cool. I mean, anyway, just okay. I didn't agree to it at that point, but I just thought, okay, the seed kind of planted in my head. Okay, well, that's something to consider. And then I thought, well, you have a roommate, right? And because he had, he had a roommate and he mentioned at some point that they planned to be roommates in the fall. And this was like a couple weeks before exams, like mid-April. And ironically, his roommate was someone that I had known before Hampton Sydney. I'd known in my early teens. A guy named Steve Pointer. I knew him. And I hadn't seen him for a few years, but I knew him. And I said, "Well, what about Pointer?" Don't and he goes, "Don't worry, I'll take care of that." I'm like, "Dude, I don't want to cause any bad blood, man. I don't want to cause any problems. Don't." And he's like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." Sure enough, a week or so later, he says to me, he goes, "Okay, it's all settled. If you want to move in, you can." So that's how we became roommates. And so I hung out with him a little bit over the summer, and then I moved in that fall, and yeah, and just very close. And the thing, however, that of all of them that kind of proved to me how much, I guess, trust and faith, I guess, and just regard he had for me, that bird, Barney the parrot. You met Barney, you know what I'm talking about. He treated that bird like a child, like a kid, like he was beyond protective of that animal. He would let no one touch it, except he would let me do it. He would let me, right? But he would let no one touch it. None of his fraternity brothers, nobody who came by the house, nobody could touch Barney. They could talk with him and they could kind of interact with him, but he would never let anyone pick him up or touch him. He's like, "No, dude, hands off." When I was there, he would let me, but I never pushed it, right? I never did more than kind of let him get on my finger and pet him and stuff. And if he was walking around, he'd crawl on me or something, but I never wanted to push that because I knew how touchy that was. But he never objected when I did it. But then all of a sudden, and I mean, I remember one time that I wasn't over at this point. I was over his apartment at this point, but at this time, but Barney got out and got up in the tree in front of his house, and he called the damn fire department to get him down. Right, the fire department showed up and got the bird down for him. Anyway, but he was extremely obsessively protective about this bird. And anyway, when we were roommates, one night, you remember this night because you were there. One night I said, "All right, man, I got to go give my help session." I was giving biology help sessions. And I said, "I got to give my help session. I'll be back in a couple hours." And he says to me, "Why don't you take Barney with you?" And I froze. I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, it'd be good for him to get out. Take Barney with you. They might get a kick out of it," he says. And I'm thinking to myself, you are letting me take this bird out of this house 5 miles down the road. You won't even let anyone touch him except me. But like I said, I never pushed that. And he's just like nonchalantly, yeah, yeah, take him. It'd be good for him. And I realized at that point, not that I hadn't before, just the degree of faith he had in me, like how much he trusted me and what kind of high regard he had for me. Like he just implicitly trusted me, and he kind of treated me like a brother, like I was his brother, and we were very brotherly with each other. And sometimes he was the big brother, sometimes I was. But as silly as it may sound, that moment floored me more than most of the others, because I realized for him to just so easily, you know, let me take that bird away from that house all the way down the road. I mean, big deal. And so that was the night I had Barney with me, right? You were there, and we, you know what I'm talking about. And Bird was the hit of that help session, right? Walking back and forth, room 101. And so, anyway, and so we had this very interesting bond, you know. It almost seemed mysterious in a way, because as I said, and people would walk up to us when they call, like at this rescue squad, people who knew both of us would walk up to like us when they found us like by ourselves. Like people would walk up to me and go, "Wow, I see you and JP are tight now." I'm like, "Well, he's my friend. What can I tell you?" Right? They're like, "Yeah, but you two are so different." It's like, what's up with that? And I'd be like, "He's my friend, dude. I don't know what to tell you?" And they would do the same thing with him, like, "You guys are so different. And on the surface we were, but beneath the surface, right? That's where that connection was, mysteriously enough. And I thought the world of him. I adored him. Um, and anyway, there's not a happy ending to this, perhaps until today. Um, I went through this period of few weeks where I didn't know I had, a systemic inflammatory disease. I didn't know anything about this. And I went through this period of 2 or 3 weeks, and even it's hazy to me when I try to remember it. But I went through this period where I was just this great deep depression alternating with just anger. Like I was angry at everything and everyone. And then I would be just deeply depressed. And I cycled back and forth for like, I don't know, weeks. And I won't go into the details of it because it's frankly too painful, but I went off on him and was more than cruel to him, and said things to him that I can't fathom today ever saying to anybody. And they certainly didn't reflect what I felt for him. and it's only looking back at it, you know, with clarity, right? Didn't even wasn't aware of it. I didn't know I had an illness. I wasn't even aware anything was wrong, right? And this had happened several times over my entire college career, but this was a particularly severe part bout of it. And I destroyed that friendship. It was that bad. And what makes it even worse is the fact that the trust he put in me, the regard he had for me, how he opened himself up to me, his home to me, how he, you know what I'm saying, was more than just a friend. He actually, invested himself, right, in our friendship, our relationship, whatever. And so it hurt him terribly. How could it not? And I destroyed it. And as trite as it sounds, looking back on it, I didn't mean to. I didn't want that. I adored him. I thought the world of him by that point. But I was just, as I said, in the light of clarity, looking back, I can see how bizarre it was. And again, it's not the first time I had gone through such bouts, right? But it was probably the worst. And yeah, and it just destroyed it. And to say I've regretted that ever since would be a gross understatement. And then, and of course, and until I got some treatment for this, and my brain wasn't, inflamed beyond recognition. I didn't even realize the gravity of what had happened, right? I mean, I was like, yeah, well, okay, anyway, it's just, and in the years after that, I would think of him, and I would think of like trying to find him, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And finally, one day, I kind of searched for him, and that's, anyway, long and short, I found out he had died in October of 2005. Died. Didn't know how or why, but I just saw that he died in Los Angeles, California. And of course, you can imagine the effect that had on me. You know, I mean, guilt would be an understatement. And I've never gotten over that. And I don't think I ever will. And my God, this is long and drawn out. I'm sorry. But anyway, being back in Farmville in that environment, and I've driven up High Street to that apartment, that house where that apartment was in. I've been there a couple times and just sat outside in the drive, staring at it. And it's kind of brought it all back to me, like right to my face. And it's been really difficult to deal with because it's just, I have a lot of grief and guilt about it because, I have a lot of love for you. I had for Fred, I had a lot of love for him, as a friend. You know, I mean, you're like a brother to me. He also you're a different brother, but was a brother to me as well. And I, I just destroyed something beautiful that I had every hope of being lifelong friendship, and then, and anyway, it's just as every time I'm in Farmville, it just kind of comes back to me and I kind of spiral. Anyway, and then today happened. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I teach straight through. I teach two classes back to back. I teach basically from 9 a.m. to 1:40 p.m. straight through. And I do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? Um, and Tuesday nights, I have my class in Farmville. And then Wednesdays, which is really my only day, I don't teach anything, is where I do my clinicals, right, for my cardiac procedure ALS course that I'm taking. I'm basically, in the process of being cleared as an AIC, as an ALS attendant in charge, right? So I have to do like 40 hours, you know, which comes out to be 5 8-hour Wednesdays where I go, I have to ride and act as the AIC under supervision and so forth, so I can get cleared to run advanced life support calls. And I'll tell you about a couple of the calls in the last couple of weeks in a minute, right? Um, but anyway, and so today, I usually eat something for like little something in the morning because I don't usually eat lunch because eating lunch makes me sleepy and I'm worthless in the afternoon. So I usually skip lunch. Today I didn't. Today I didn't eat. So I left the house in a hurry and I didn't eat something. And so, when quarter of two came around, I'm teaching, for hours and hours on my feet. I was tired and I was like, I got to eat something. And so, driving home my street, Oxbridge Road, it's a street right off Hull Street, right off 360. If you're going east on 360, turn right. And my street's about a mile deep, if you will, and my house is near the cul-de-sac at the end. And so, anyway, on the either side of the Hull Street Oxbridge intersection are shopping centers, and there's one that has a Subway in it. And so I think I've only been in that Subway twice. Today was the second time because I don't usually eat lunch. And anyway, I thought, okay, let's just stop in there today and get something because I don't have anything at the house for lunch really. And I was like, let's just get something, a tuna sub or something. Very unusual, but I did. And so I go into Subway and it's still like the sort of the end, I guess, of the lunch hour. And there's people in there. So I'm in line, right? And so, the Subway line is like a snake line. You're not in front and back. People are side by side. So I'm standing there with my arms folded, waiting my turn at the front. All of a sudden I feel this boom boom on my right arm, like someone tapping me to get my attention. And so I turn to look, and there's this little woman. She looked like she was in her 60s, had a corduroy jacket, and she had on her head what looked like one of those fly fisherman caps, right? With the flies in the thing. She had that on her head. And then she kind of looked at me with this sly smile. And I said, "Hi, how are you today?" And then she said, "Someone wants to talk to you." I was like, "Excuse me?" She said, "Someone needs to talk to you." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay." And she said, "He's behind me and keeps saying in my ear, 'Rescue squad, rescue squad.' Does that mean anything to you? Do you work for the rescue squad?" And I said, "Well, sort of." So I'm starting to get a little freaked out here, right? He's telling me, just say rescue squad, and he'll know who it is. And I said, he? And she said, yeah, young male. He appears to me to be 20, 21. He said they usually appear to me the way you knew them. And of course, you know where my mind goes. And I'm like, what the fuck? And she said, he needs to talk to you. He wants me to talk to you. And I'm just staring at her. At this point, the person next to her and the person on the other side of me, they're now turned. They're listening to what's going on, and and half the line is like looking at us. And I felt like I was on the stage with the spotlight coming down on me, right? I mean, I'm like the center of attention at this point. And then she goes on, and I'm trying to get it all. She said so many things, but then she said, something happened between you and you're suffering. And he wants you to know that he sees that. And he says, tell him I'm okay. I'm fine, that I understand now. And then she said, he does not want that for you. He doesn't want you to be unhappy. He said he wants you to let this go. And then I just like, you can imagine I'm like, what? And then she puts her arm, she goes, honey, it's all It's all good. This is all positive because he wouldn't be here if you didn't need to hear it. 'Cause he says they know. They know what you need when you need it. And then and then she puts her hands to her heart like this and she goes, "Oh, there's so much love between you. There's so much love there." He said, "There's a connection between you two that goes way beyond one lifetime." He goes, "I'm sensing you've had many lifetimes together. Many of them were as brothers. You've been brothers together in lifetimes before." And he tells me that you'll have plenty of lifetimes to come. So she said, "Nothing has ended." He goes, "He's around you. He's very connected to you. He's around you a lot. He sees and feels the suffering you have for whatever happened." Because I don't know what it was, but it's something that damaged your relationship or whatever its nature was, she said. And she said, "He doesn't want that for you. He wants you to be okay because he's okay." And then she said, "It takes a lot of energy for them," and she had told me, that she has this ability. She said, I usually don't share it unless I feel a need to. And she said, "It takes a lot of energy for them to come through like this to me." And then she said, "It would be like I pointed in the distance and told you to go climb a mountain in the distance, climb it, climb down again, and come back. How much energy it would take you to do that. That's kind of the energy it takes them to come through in our dimension like this." This is her words. She said, "So he climbed a mountain. That's how important you are to him. And he doesn't want you to be unhappy anymore." So she said, "So will you please try?" And then she listened for a second and she said, "He says if you won't do it for yourself because you don't think you deserve it, he says do it for me." And so I'm like crying at this point, right in the middle of subway, in shock. And she puts her hand on me. She says, "It's okay." She goes, "It's everything's gonna be okay. This is all everything." And people are like looking at me and I'm just not that I cared about that at that point, but I'm just like in shock, standing there. And then she said to me, she said, yeah, she said, they come through when they need to, right? And he needed to. And then she said, "It's not the first time you've gotten help, is it?" And I thought to myself, what are we talking about now? She says, "That's not the first time you've asked for help, is it?" And then she said, "You know what I mean." And then my mind goes to the blanket incident. I think I told you about that, where I woke up one morning in my room, right? In that same quad Fred and I had. I was to a blanket over me that didn't exist the night before, that I had never seen before, ever, and that didn't belong to anybody. Suddenly, poof, appeared. And that was another instance where this depression just hit me. That was a night, this was the first night of spring break, and I had gotten permission to stay on campus because ostensibly to study for the MCAT. And I got permission to stay in the dorm, in D dorm. And so Fred went home, Wallet went home, Dave, everybody. So everybody went home. There's nobody in that dorm. And this was, of course, like March. This was Friday, March the 3rd. I remember the date. It's still cold. It's freezing outside. And I thought, okay, it's Friday. And JP was like, "We're having a frat party. Why don't you come?" And I thought, okay, I got to study this week. That was the plan anyways. And I thought, but at least I can do something fun Friday night. So I went to this frat party and it was a bonfire by the river. And it was one of these parties, again, he'd check on me and stuff, and it was all good. It was fun, and I didn't really drink much. And anyway, so I came back to camp. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I had to get Al, the security guard, to let me in to the D dorm. This door was locked, doors were locked. And so he let me in, and I got into my room, and I remembered, I looked in my room, and there was nothing there. No sheets, no blanket, no nothing, no towels, no clothes. I had literally taken every article of everything to the laundry way down F dorm where the laundromat was. Because I can remember that afternoon, I was like, all right, everybody's leaving. I can have the whole fucking laundromat to myself, right? And so I took everything down there and then just forgot. And so when I got back to my dorm room, Al had let me in, locked the doors behind me. And I thought, fuck, I can't go all the way down there and get my laundry. And it was, the heat was turned off or turned way down in the dorm. It was freezing in that dorm room. And I was like, oh my God. And so I sat down on the side of the bed as a bare mattress, nobody around, just me. And then it came for me like another one of these like depressive episodes. It just hit me out of the blue like a hammer. And I just went into this black hole of like despair. And I was just despondent. It just hit me out of the blue. It always did. Sometimes it would for an hour, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a month. And it just came for me. And I sat there sobbing to my hands at 2:30 or whatever it was in the morning in this freezing cold room all by myself. And I'd been fine. I'd been out with my friend at this party. And anyway, and I just sobbed in my hands and it was just darkness doesn't even come close to the feeling. And I can remember thinking to myself, why is this happening? I was like, why can't somebody help me? And then I remember I, I, I cried so much that it exhausted me. I was physically exhausted, mentally exhausted. I was like, all right, I'm just going to curl up in a ball. I had my winter jacket on, my ski jacket, whatever, my jeans, everything. I'm all my clothes, my jacket, and I just curled up in a ball on my bare mattress, like in the fetal position, and just kind of decided to sleep that way and fell right asleep. The next conscious thought I had was when I awakened and saw the light from the sunlight coming through my eyelids the next morning. It's about 4 hours later. It was like 8:30 in the morning. It's about 4 hours had passed, slept. And I can remember waking up and being aware of being awake before my eyes open, and I could see the sunlight coming through my eyelids. And I had the feeling I had had when I went to sleep, the polar opposite was when I woke up. I just felt this wave of joy beyond anything I had ever felt or have ever felt since. I had this just joy and I had this knowing. I didn't articulate it in words in my mind. I just had this knowing that everything was going to be okay and all was as it should be, whether I understand it or not. I mean, I had this understanding, and this is all before I opened my eyes. This is like 2 seconds worth of, but my thoughts were going like this. And I can remember thinking that it's going to be a great day. This is just going to be a perfect day. And that is the opposite end of the solar system from what I had felt 4 hours earlier. And that's when I opened my eyes and the shock, because the first thing I saw, well, noticed, was that I was lying flat on my back in the repose position like this, which I never do. I don't sleep like that. I never do this. And draped over me from my toes to my neck, like someone had tucked me in or whatever, was this blue blanket that I had never seen before, that did not belong to me and was not anywhere in that room 4 hours earlier. Okay, what the fuck's going on? And I'm looking at this blanket, and then I look over and I see my jacket that I had on 4 hours earlier when I fell asleep was hanging in the wardrobe. My shoes are over there on the chair. My clothes were still on, except my shoes had been taken off of me and put over neatly on a chair, and my jacket was hanging in a wardrobe, and a blanket that didn't exist 4 hours earlier was laying over. This really happened. To this day, I have no idea how that happened or where that blanket came from until today. Um, If she can be believed, I have no reason now not to. But anyway, I asked when everybody came back from spring break, no, nobody had ever seen it, didn't belong to anyone, it had no tags on it. It just appeared out of thin air. And then when she said that to me, she said, "You've been helped before from the other side." She said, "You know what I'm talking about, don't you?" And that's what I thought of. And she said, "You have angels around you. They're looking after you. You asked for help and you got it." And then I'm just standing there in shock. I don't know what to do. I'd even forgotten I ordered food. And then she said, "It's gonna be okay, honey. It's gonna be okay." She goes, "Go, let's get your lunch." And that was it. I just I paid for my sandwich and I waited for her to pay for hers and I said, "Thank you. I don't know what to say." She goes, "You didn't have to do the talking, I did. Because I can tell you, your friend is stubborn and was not gonna leave me alone until I told you. And so don't think any of this was by accident. None of it was. He arranged all of it, right? He put the pieces in place." She goes, "You needed to hear this, so he made it happen. And just know that he is always very close to you. He's around you, he's near you, he's connected to you, he's never far away from you." And then she said, "Oh, he says you talk to him. You talk to him a lot." And I have been talking to him as if he could hear me. I mean, I don't know if he could or not. I just did. I just kind of talk with him. And she said, "He hears you." And then he says he's calling you a chatty cat. I'm like, "Oh, fuck." I'm thinking, and I said, "Well, I'm probably bald. Shut out of him." And she said, "No, no, he's joking. She goes, "He has a strange sense of humor. It's a combination of sarcasm and kind of sweetness." And she goes, "It's just," and I'm like, I read that. I understand that, right? And I said, the last thing I really said to her, I said, "Well, he was my friend." She said, "Is, I mean, he is your friend. He always will be. He's actually much more than that, right? But he is, and he is always with you, and he will be with you again. And when it's your time, he will be right there." And then she goes, "I'm going to go. You have a nice day. And I hope this helped you." And then she took her bag and she walked out. She got her drink and then she walked out and left me standing there holding my bag. And anyway, I just sat down by the tables just to get my bearings, see like what the hell just happened. And even now I can't process it. It's a beautiful thing, but it's just so mind blowing. And all I mean, I just anyway, I'm sorry, Bet. I just had to well, I wanted to tell you specifically, but I also had to tell someone. But anyway, this is what happened to me today. And like I said, it's kind of knocked me on my ass. Um, in a good way, I guess. But anyway, took me way longer than I thought. I knew it was going to. I'm sorry about that. Um, anyway, so oh, um, also I meant to say the weekend you mentioned for a visit, unfortunately, that is the where's my thing here? That is the yeah, wait a minute here. What am I doing? There we go. That is this weekend. This is this is that weekend right here. Like, this is the Prince Edward training schedule. They have like training all the time. They're like offering like training and refreshers for all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's really a professionally done operation there now. But that's this weekend. It's the EVOC course. Every single member of the rescue squad, right, within 1 year of joining has to become at least an EMT, right? And within 6 months of joining, have to become EVOC certified and cleared to be a driver. Every single member has to be cleared as a driver, right? So that if necessary, anyone can drive. So that weekend that you mentioned is this weekend. It's my EVOC course, so I've got to take that basically through February. Like my current course ends, I believe it's March 19th. So anytime after that, my life frees up a good bit. I won't be going to Farmville every Saturday and all this kind of stuff. So if you have any open dates after late March for the rest of whatever, I would love to see you. Probably a better bet for my availability until I get through this training course and I get through my 40 hours of clinical ride along to get cleared as a provider, all this kind of stuff. Because that's kind of where all my spare time is going. So yeah, take a look at your calendar like from mid-March on, and if you've got a weekend, I would love, love, love to see you. You have no idea. Um, so I wanted to let you know that. And then finally, I want to tell you about some of my calls that I've had doing my little stint as an AIC attendant in charge, sort of in training, an ALS attendant in charge in training. So very first day, which was not yesterday, but a week ago, Wednesday. Um, First call of the day, gunshot to the head. Yep. And so this was on Edmonds Street. I don't know if you remember Edmonds Street. It's one of those streets that overlooks Main Street, like High Street and all that. Those neighborhoods up there that overlook Main Street. Um, the 60-year-old man was shot in the head. He was in his pickup truck at the stop sign on his way home from the store. His wife had sent him to the store, grocery store. And he stopped the stop sign, and this dude walks up with a 10 millimeter in his hand and says, "Get out of your truck. I'm taking your truck." And so the old man, I have to admire his moxie. I mean, he slams on the accelerator thinking, okay, if I speed off, I can get away from this guy. And then the dude takes shots at him from behind, and a bullet goes through the cab and shoots him in the head. Now, thankfully, it went through the maxilla on the left and through the maxilla on the right. Went, of course, it shattered the bone in his face. He was unrecognizable, nothing but massive blood and tissue, but he was alive, right? And so, I'm kind of working him up, starting IVs, and I got the EMT, two EMTs with me to do the bleeding, give him some tranexamic acid, clot the blood, blah blah blah. And I said to him, I'm like, "Sir, I know you think this is your unluckiest day, but I'm telling you, it's the luckiest day of your life." Because I said, even a half an inch, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So this is a lucky day considering. And anyway, they flew him out. Central One's helicopters, one of the medevac services. They came and flew him out because he needed major, major, first of all, trauma treatment and reconstruction. And then the second call, right after we got him packaged up and sent off, we were on our way back to it's called the station now. We used to call it the squad house. It's that brand. It's a beautiful facility. When you visit, we'll tour it. I'll take you there. And Then we get another call. Woman run over by car. And sure enough, right, this 23-year-old guy walks up to her window, points a gun at her, and says, "Get out of your car, I'm taking it." So the same guy had found another victim. And she gets out of the car and complies with him, and then he proceeds to run her over, right? Ran right over her hips, shattered her pelvis. She had pelvic fracture. Come to find out, it was fractured in 3 places. Big issue with pelvic fracture is bleeding because some major vessels go through the pelvis. Your aorta bifurcates, into the iliac vessels, big, large bore vessels. Bleeding is the big issue, bleeding out. So anyway, and then the third call of the day was another gunshot wound to the head because the police found the guy and cornered him down an old dry cleaners right off Third Street behind Main Street. It's just like where McAdoo's is, but a little farther down and over. It's like a little dry cleaners closed, but it's a kind of a barren parking lot. And the police had surrounded him, and so the guy took a gun and shot himself. Took his gun, and he was still alive when we got there and died right in front of me, basically. And so that was call number three. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, all right, did I make a wrong turn and end up in South Chicago? Or is this Farmville? Like, and so it wasn't over yet because, turned out a couple hours later, the Farmville police called and called us there again and said nobody's pronounced him dead. Like the medical examiner had come or they couldn't get, I don't know. They're like, one of you has to pronounce him dead. And so I'm like, okay, which you can do in Virginia if you're an ALS provider, if you have to. If it's, evident that someone's dead, there's no question. And he was, right? He, bored a hole in his head. And so they unzipped the body bag, which was a little weird for me. I hadn't seen that since my medical training days. It's kind of whoa, and so pronounced the guy dead. So that was the third call of the day. Fourth call of the day about 4:30 in the afternoon. No, 3:30 was 3:30 in the afternoon. 12-year-old collapses on playground field. Blood pressure was 50/30 in shock and anaphylactic shock, right? Something had, either stung him or he'd eaten something, whatever it was, but it put him in massive anaphylaxis. And he was cold, blue, and clammy and not breathing. And so that was a pediatric resuscitation, right? Um, he survived. It didn't take him long to come back. ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation, right? They flew him out to, they flew him to Children's Hospital here in Richmond. They flew him out, and I heard that he did fine. But there was this kid laying there, blue and clammy and in shock right in front of me. And anyway, that was my first day as, I guess you could say an AIC in training or the clearance process. And then yesterday was also a busy day. And then I'll end this because I know I've been going way too long. If you're still listening, you're a saint. But anyway, one of our patients was 900 pounds. A 35-year-old male weighed 900 pounds, completely bedridden, laying flat on his back. He had so much flesh that it hung over the bed and hit the floor on the side. The mother said the last time he was weighed, he was 900. He probably weighs more now. I'm like, all right, so let's just say between 900 and 1,000 pounds. So much tissue in his thorax that it's too heavy. He cannot move. He cannot expand his chest. He cannot ventilate enough air. So he's sitting there suffocating right in front of us. And so, you know, we had to give him, you know, dexmetodine, which is, knock him out or intubate him and, ventilate him. And we're like, how are we going to get him out of here? She's like, last time to get him in here, we had to get the fire department. I was like, that's what I was thinking. So we called the fire department, the Farmville Fire Department, and like 20 of them showed up. God bless them. And they brought us like a sled, and they had and the house was off, like, 'cause again, it was one of those streets kind of off Main Street up above. And it was a house that, had like cement or concrete, whatever, stairs leading up to the front porch. So this house was here, and so like two sets of stairs to get up to the front door. Right, this dude's this 1,000-pound dude, whatever, is up there, and so the fire department literally brought lumber and started to build a ramp, right, to get the guy down. And so we were there for like 2 hours while the fire department was building a ramp to slide this guy down these stairs, and then to get him on this sled, literally pulled him off the bed onto this sled. And so bam, he hit the, I mean, 900 pounds, 1,000 pounds. I had never even heard of someone that weighed that much. 500 pounds, I've heard of 600, maybe even, but almost half a ton. And anyway, we slid this guy down those stairs, man, right into a special hydraulic bariatric stretcher, right? And then, they took him to Chippenham Hospital here in Richmond. They're trying to get him a placement in some facility. He's 35 years old, right? Can't move. He weighs so much he can't even sit up, right? Nobody can change his diaper. He's laying in his own exit. Anyway, you get the picture, because no one can turn him over to move him. I mean, it was both heartbreaking and mind blowing at the same time. And so that was yesterday. And the other major call, there are a couple others that weren't so serious, but the other major call was a deputy sheriff who, after this drug arrest, they pulled over this dude that had drugs in his car. And so, like the whole sheriff's department shows up. And what had happened was he found a bag, he got found a white bag of white powder in the guy's car. And the deputy sheriff stupidly opens the bag, and it's a windy day. So what happens? But the white powder flies out in a puff, and he breathes in some of it, and seconds later collapses face first on the road. Because guess what that was? Fentanyl. Holy fuck. So get there, he's in complete respiratory arrest, right? Thank God a few hits of Narcan got him breathing again. But it was touch and go for a while, right? But the freaking guy breathed in, powdered fentanyl, for God's sake, and then fell right out and stopped breathing. So anyway, it's been quite an adventure. And so yesterday was only my second 8-hour training day, clearance day, right? So I've got 40 of them. So I'm basically every Wednesday through the 28th of February, or the 27th of February, 28th, whatever it is, that last Wednesday, I'm there for 8 hours doing these trainings and to get cleared as an attendant in charge. Um, anyway, I've spoken way too long, I meant to, but I don't know, man. I've had such a day. I mean, it's a happy thing, right? I'm happy. But it's sort of a life altering thing. And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, um, yeah. Oh, and I took some pictures yesterday with you in mind. So there's what the back of a newer ambulance looks like. So there's an ALS jump bag, right? It's got drugs in there and all sorts of stuff. This is basically a portable ICU monitor. It does 12 lead EKG. It does oxygen saturation. It does end tidal CO2. It's also an automatic defibrillator, and also a manual one if you want to control it manually. It's also a cardioverter. It has cardioversion capability. It's also a pacemaker. It has pacing capability, right? It also keeps track of blood pressure and other vital signs in real time. And so, it detaches and you can take it in with you into a house or wherever you are and do all these things. Put a 12 lead EKG on there, whatever. Um, and so, yes, and these stretchers are the Stryker automatic hydraulic ones that have buttons that raise and lower them on a hydraulic lift. And also, it has an automatic looping mechanism where a track comes out of the ambulance and you line the wheels up and literally it grabs hold of the stretcher, lifts it up and pulls it in the ambulance all its own, and then takes it, when you want to get it out of the ambulance, it does it for you. There's no more of this lifting stuff, and breaking your back trying to lift patients on a stretcher. It's all automatic. It's amazing. Um, and so all these units are very nice and very, and behind me, like I'm sitting in the sort of the jump chair here, and behind me up to my left is the drug cabinet with all the ALS drugs, right? Which the range that ALS providers can give in Virginia is fascinating to me. For instance, ALS providers at the paramedic level, at least, can give fentanyl for pain relief, right? That's a drug that they're cleared to give. Um, they can give Pitocin to speed up uterine contractions and pregnancy. I mean, it's amazing. Paramedics are in Virginia, at least, really are the extension of an emergency physician, right? They do a lot in the field of what an emergency physician does in the emergency department. It's quite amazing. But anyway, I just took this picture and thought, you know, like to see kind of what it was like. What else do I have here for you? This I saw on the wall yesterday. You remember her, right? This was your old crewmate, right? Nancy. They honored her back in 2008. I guess she retired from the rescue squad or whatever. I don't know if she's still alive. I didn't ask anyone that, but I saw that and I thought of you and I thought I would take that picture, right? This is in the squad building. And what else? Oh, yeah. That's what we started with. There's the guy's house right there. So you can see where the street is and all these steps to get up here. This is the front porch. This was the first plan, which was to take some backboards and create a ramp, but we couldn't secure them well enough. And so, there are like 10 firemen inside the house, and the rest of us are out here trying to figure out how to do it. And finally, they decided to get some lumber and build like this temporary like ramp. I wish I'd gotten a picture of that, but I took a picture of this because I thought, all right, this ain't gonna work. And I thought, all right, I gotta get a picture of all this, right? So we're all trying to figure out how to get the guy down. So, but anyway, all this was yesterday. Anyway, my friend, it's been quite an adventure. If you are still listening and still awake, you are indeed a saint, and I appreciate it very much. Um, but yeah, so look at March and times after, whatever works for you, and let's get a weekend and let's do this. Um, because I very much would like to see you. It's been way too long. Yeah, so anyway, I have talked way too much, so I will end this. All right. Take care and hopefully we'll talk soon. All right. Say hey to Bella for me. All right. Bye bye.